Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Sadness and relief for the family of an Indigenous man who died in police custody in Prince George.
I don't want my dad's death to be for nothing.
5 Mounties are now charged more than 5 years after he died. Plus, trying to help loved ones struggling with mental illness.
When I'm in a manic state, I'm very vulnerable.
Families run into concerns over privacy.
Feeling like the door is just shut in our faces.
And still a heavy lift.
This has been promoted as this is it. This is going to solve the problem, and unfortunately, I think it falls short.
Some family doctors in BC say the new payment model is a start, but doesn't cut down their sometimes brutal hours.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. A day after 5 Prince George RCMP officers were charged in the 2017 death of an Indigenous man, Dale Culver, his daughter is speaking out about how long it took to lay charges after he died in custody. Renee Filipponi has our top story.
Dale Culver was 35 years old, a father of 3, when he died in the custody of Prince George RCMP in 2017.
I will never get to make any more memories with him.
This is a photo of Lily Speed Namox as a child with her father. She says waiting more than 5 years to see charges laid has been painful.
If the RCMP and my dad had switched roles, my dad would it wouldn't have gone this way. There's no way it would have taken this long.
2 officers have been charged with manslaughter and 3 with attempted obstruction of justice. Over the years, protests have been held demanding answers and accountability. The police watchdog recommended the Crown consider charges in 2020. He blames a shortage of investigators for the delay.
I feel awful about it. That's why I don't sleep at nights. But it's not just this file, it's other files.
4 of the officers charged remain on active duty in Prince George. 1 is on administrative leave for other reasons.
If I were to have any kind of situation happen like that, I can tell you I probably wouldn't want to contact the RCMP.
Adding to this is the death of her uncle, Everett Patrick, following an arrest in 2020. The IIO is also asking Crown to consider charges in that case as well.
I think that there needs to be a seismic shift in the attitudes of police in Canada and certainly in British Columbia with respect to their absolute disrespect for people of color, Black people, Indigenous people.
Still grieving, Speed Namox keeps her father close to her heart. His ashes held in this necklace.
So that he can still see me and my siblings get older and be with us every day.
The officers charged in his death will appear in court March 14th. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
The family of a woman in and out of mental health treatment for nearly 14 years says it is time they had more say in how she is treated. As Belle Puri explains, the complaint is one that's becoming more frequent among those responsible for adult relatives living with mental illness.
Childhood memories filled the heart.
My sister growing up was always like the big smile on her face, giggling little girl.
As a young woman, Cora Hooker became an accomplished athlete with a spot on Canada's national women's football team and studying kinesiology in university. Suddenly, everything changed. In her early 20s, Cora was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
It started about once every year. She would have a manic episode, and in the last 2-3 years, and really in the last year, it's been almost nonstop.
A Christmas manic episode was particularly damaging.
When I'm in a manic state, I'm very vulnerable.
Cora ended up homeless on Edmonton's cold winter streets.
When I'm not able to take care of my mental health, it's family that comes in and helps where they can. And so I think it's important to have more communication between family and healthcare professionals.
That's the stumbling block.
And for years and years, I've been trying to help her and advocate on her behalf. And feel completely shut out. And there's so much red tape and just feeling like the door is just shut in our faces.
Despite a power of attorney and signed confidentiality disclosure document, access to treatment and care plans is continually denied.
I have 13 years of experience of knowing what's been going on with her, what medication she's taken, what has worked, what hasn't worked, the fact that she is sick.
When it comes to adult relatives with mental illness, privacy issues trump family input, even though some health authorities have family involvement policies.
The bottom line is that professionals need to understand and realize that they can gain a lot of information and insight from a family member. There's a lot that can be said and still not breach confidentiality.
Before turning to politics, his former RCMP officer saw the self-harm, even death, caused by a lack of communication.
It really does point to a significant gap in our ability to allow family members to share that valuable information. And it keeps people in a perpetual cycle of suffering.
Jennifer Whiteside, BC's Minister of Mental Health, says sections of the Act are under review, but it's too early to say what changes might be made.
I hate to say this, but I've lost quite a bit of hope in things getting better.
And that scares families.
My biggest fear is I'm going to get that call that my sister is dead. That call is going to come one day. Either that call is going to come or my sister is just going to go missing and we're never going to know what happened to her.
Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province says it is expanding mental health supports for young people. Meanwhile, new teams will coordinate mental health and substance use services in 7 more school districts.
They are multidisciplinary teams of professionals providing integrated mental health and substance use services for children and youth. So what do we mean by this? We're bringing together supports from schools, from the community, from our healthcare system, from Ministry of Children and Family Development, and the team is cutting across all of those different agencies.
The province says today's announcement brings the number of specialized integrated child and youth teams to 12. It hopes to have 20 teams or teams in 20 school districts by next year. BC Liberal leader Kevin Falcon, meanwhile, was in Westminster today, offering his party's vision for how to tackle BC's deadly, grinding, toxic drug crisis for the price of $1.5 billion over 3 years.
Better is possible, and the initiatives that I am announcing today will form the foundation of what will be our united, comprehensive strategy on mental health and addiction treatment.
Falcon and the Liberals promised to triple the number of beds at the Red Fish Healing Centre on the former Riverview lands and add similar facilities across BC. It also pledges to make treatment free by getting rid of user fees at publicly existing treatment beds and expand deals with private operators. The announcement comes just days after small amounts of drugs were decriminalized in BC. Still with healthcare, the province is committing $2 million in grant money to support paramedic training throughout the province.
These students, like the ones that are sitting right behind me, they will help fill a crucial role in our healthcare system. It's the entry point for so many.
The grant is going to the Justice Institute of BC to help expand its paramedic programming, helping about 130 students in New Westminster, Chilliwack, Kelowna, Trail, Prince George, Victoria, Cranbrook, and Port Alberni. Funding can be used to pay for transportation and housing for those traveling from outside those communities.
The opportunity to move this training out into these communities brings the training to the paramedics. That makes it easier, and so the more paramedics we can train to really bridge the challenges we have for recruitment is absolutely welcomed. And this is good news. $2 million will train a lot of paramedics.
The province says there will be 1 million job openings in BC over the next 8 years. More than 140,000 of them in the healthcare sector alone. As we told you last night, BC's new payment plan for family doctors is now up and running. It is hoped the big pay boost will attract more doctors to family medicine and encourage those already there to take on more patients. But as our Premji shows us, some physicians say it does nothing to deal with the burnout they're already feeling.
Hello, good afternoon.
Seeing patients.
Simon, you're feeling well?
Yes.
Yeah.
And getting to the core of their health concerns has always been top of mind for Dr. Anna Wallach, but she says the workload is exhausting.
The mental health of family physicians and healthcare workers in general is like down to the bottom.
She was hoping the province would have a solution for this by now, beyond a new payment model.
This has been promoted as this is it. This is going to solve the problem, and unfortunately, I think it falls short.
The new model will see doctors paid for the number of patients they see and the complexity of their needs instead of a flat rate per visit. Family physician salaries are set to rise from $250,000 a year to about $385,000. For some doctors, this is what they've been waiting for.
I think you're going to see more patients getting new family doctors over the next few months. Now the compensation is more attractive and just experiencing less burnout.
But Wallach fears the burnout will linger.
It doesn't matter if you're paying me for these hours that I'm working. You're still paying me to work until like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm only getting 3 hours of sleep. That's not good for me being sustained in the long run.
And BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau echoes Wallach's sentiments, and she wants the province to set up community health centres across BC. Wallach says the province needs to give her more answers before she will sign on to the new plan. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
We're learning more about the alleged imposter accused of posing as a nurse at BC Women's Hospital. Court documents filed by the Provincial Health Services Authority reveal Bridget Cleroux was directly involved with treating 899 patients and indirectly involved in the treatment of another 258. The alleged deception occurred over the course of a year. The documents show that PHSA is now confirming both the name and license of every nurse it hires. Cleroux allegedly used an assumed identity and was not required to give a valid registration number when she did start to work. Meanwhile, a Surrey care aide faces dozens more criminal charges for allegedly defrauding elderly victims. The RCMP says 30-year-old Anna Marie Lat Chamdal has been charged with 65 new counts for a total of 71 charges. It includes assault, fraud over $5,000, theft of credit cards, and possession of a forged document. Unlike doctors or nurses, BC care providers aren't regulated or governed by any body. Chamdal remains in jail ahead of a court appearance next Thursday. It is the slowest housing market in more than a decade. New statistics from the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board show a plummeting number of sales. Now we're reaching figures that haven't been seen since the 2008 financial crisis. What does this mean for buyers, first of all? Our Justin McElroy joins us with more on these developments. Justin.
Yeah, Dan, we've been talking for a while about this slowdown in the housing market, but I want to show you a chart that just puts how starkly this has happened. So this is month by month residential home sales in the Greater Vancouver area. And you see this big spike during the pandemic. We talked a lot about that. But look at this fall that has happened here. We've had 1,022 sales in the last month. That's lower than any time over the last 10 years. It's the 2008 financial crisis was the last time that we saw this sort of slowdown. And it's been continued for a number of months if you look at it. I talked with one housing economist about the reasons why, and he said it's pretty straightforward.
The key theme is affordability, or the lack thereof. The combination of the higher interest rates that we've seen for the past year, that we've seen in terms of the variable rates moving up. Of course, fixed rates still remain quite elevated, and prices, although they're coming down, are still very high. So for many consumers, it's just really a question of not being able to get into this market at the current time.
There's just not a lot of motivated buyers or sellers at the moment, and that's why we're seeing numbers almost go below 1,000 for the first time since 2008. It
is stark, to say the least, Justin. Let's go to the other side, the inevitable question. Will this decline in sales turn into a significant decline in prices?
Well, we've already seen a bit of decline in prices, particularly in detached homes, while this fall in sales has happened. So let's take a look at another chart here. It's the average sale price in the Greater Vancouver area. You can see that detached home amount go down by quite a bit. 1.9 million was the average sales price last month. That's still quite a lot for the average person. Yu says that he expects that to go down a fair bit more because of these high interest rates. However, with the labor market still looking good and the overall economy in British Columbia looking good, he says people shouldn't expect a giant crash, but certainly a continuing softening of those numbers over the next few months, he believes will be likely.
All right, Justin McElroy, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
A BC academic is defending a popular artificial intelligence tool that some consider cheating. The tool, known as ChatGPT, can write essays, cover letters, answer questions in all seconds. As Yasmin Gandam tells us, the AI is so powerful it has educators reconsidering their approach to the classroom.
And it generated a somewhat generic, obviously, but not a bad template for grad school application cover letter.
A simple search, "Write me a cover letter," generates a response in seconds. Launched last November, ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence chat software capable of creating human-sounding responses based off user prompts. Students at UBC have already been caught using ChatGPT to cheat, and its use has been blocked in U.S. public school districts, including Los Angeles and New York City. But Fred Schwartz, an assistant professor in computer science at UBC, says the tool offers learning benefits and should not be banned.
Way to improve the writing if you fit it with some text that you wrote and ask it to make it more formal or more informative or more well-formed, and you actually learn from that process, and that could be a good outcome for a student.
Other instructors feel the same, saying they are having to adjust the syllabus so students are using more critical thinking skills to avoid copying and pasting information.
I need to rewrite my syllabus. I need to rewrite my assignments. I need to talk with students about what does this mean in terms of how they approach the course.
I tell them that, it offers new possibilities and, we live in interesting times. It makes things interesting, and that there are possible ways in which it could be used to cheat. And I tell them that, as professors, we're on to that.
In a statement to CBC, UBC says they are aware of ChatGPT and are leaving it up to faculty members to decide how to use the tool in their curriculum. The university is currently discussing new guidelines on how to regulate its use. But instructors are optimistic about the future of education and innovative ways to both teach and learn.
Work will get better, work will get faster, but how we engage with that work is going to shift.
Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Earlier this week, the union representing Fraser Valley bus drivers issued a strike notice, 72 hours worth, stating that as of 3 p.m. today, their bus drivers would be off the job. Today, drivers stopped collecting fares, and full service withdrawal is scheduled for the end of the month, if the strike continues, I should say. On Monday, CUPE 561 said Fraser Valley drivers did not feel like they were being paid as much as drivers on the Lower Mainland, despite doing just as much work. Still with transportation, TransLink is rolling out new electric buses across our region. 15 new battery electric coaches are joining the fleet, all part of a plan to cut greenhouse gas emissions. The new buses will replace aging diesel ones. The move is set to reduce over 1,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions every year. TransLink hopes to add over 400 battery electric buses to the fleet by 2030. Well, it is a big day for one reclusive rodent. Yes, February 2nd, Groundhog Day. While much of Canada's attention tends to center on the predictions from the critters out east, our own Johanna Wagstaff caught up with a distant cousin on Vancouver Island, a marmot named Violet.
I'm here at the Marmot Recovery Center on Groundhog Day. So this is a big day for one female marmot in particular. Adam Taylor is executive director here. Can you tell me about the star that we're looking at in this screen?
So one of the three marmots in this picture is Vancouver Island Violet, and she is our official Vancouver Island marmot weather prognosticator.
Violet. And she's like just through one of these walls right now, right?
That's right. That's right.
So first of all, she's a marmot. Mad respect, I love marmots, but how is that connected to groundhogs?
So a marmot and a groundhog are effectively the same thing. So marmots and groundhogs belong to a genus, Marmota, and they're all, the terms are used interchangeably. So Vancouver Island marmots have been called groundhogs in the past. Groundhogs, which we normally think of as eastern groundhogs or woodchucks, they've been called marmots. They're all members, they're all pretty closely related. So Violet is a certified groundhog.
But Violet is in hibernation mode right now. Can you tell me a bit about what that looks for marmots here?
So marmots, Vancouver Island marmots hibernate for 6 to 7 months of the year. And during that period, they're going to go underground and they're going to dig themselves a hibernacula. And they're really not going to do a whole lot. Really, their body temperature is just a couple degrees above ambient. They've got virtually no brain activity. they're burning as few calories as possible. And during that time, every couple of weeks, they're going to wake up just a little bit. They might urinate or defecate. They've got a separate chamber in their hibernacula for that. And then they're just going to head back into their hibernation chamber. And that's a way for them to cope with living in a subalpine environment. You know, there's 2-3 meters of snow, sometimes more than that, on top of their hibernation chambers. And they've got to survive that long period where their vegetation that they're feeding off is inaccessible. So for them, they're like halfway through it. I assure you, Violet wanted nothing more than to get back to sleep. Like that, that was it.
Well, you did great today, Violet, and you're welcome on my meteorology team anytime. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Marmot on the weather team? Kuljeet Kaila, why not?
I'm going to make space underneath the desk.
We don't have any space for that. Do you know how many people would be delighted by having a marmot around here?
Oh my goodness,
Would
it
be
would
like
be cute.
magical.
Yes.
Was the weather magical today?
Well, I mean, Groundhog's Day, we had a bunch of experiments across Canada. More than half came back with 6 more weeks of winter, including Lucy the lobster in Nova Scotia, which was very important. And then we've got winter and snow warnings for northern BC again today, up to 50 centimeters of snow by Saturday morning, up towards Terrace, another 35 centimeters today alone, and a wind warning along the coast for Haida Gwaii and Port Hardy. So we're going to see some cold conditions through there. Still a mix of rain and snow for Prince George, 3 degrees through there. And Port Hardy, that wind and that rain is going to make for some pretty cold conditions tomorrow. The rain for the lower mainland is going to be about 30 millimeters on Friday, another 25 by the weekend. Of course, for the Tri-Cities and higher elevations like Squamish, a lot more than that, up to 50 millimeters on Friday. Sunset just after 5 under cloudy skies. We're going to see more clouds tomorrow, 4 degrees just before 8 a.m. And then, of course, the rain starting tomorrow just before noon, 30 millimeters of rain coming. It's going to be a lot colder, and that's because of a cold front that we're getting. And this winter blast is actually happening right across Canada, and I'll have those details coming up later, Dan.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kuljeet. Dissecting a crash. A lawyer is going to join us to take a closer look at a Vancouver collision that has many wondering, who's at fault? That is next. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. The snowstorm that hit Toronto may not have been popular with commuters, but it was just what ski enthusiasts there have been waiting for. As Greg Ross tells us, one hill in the city is now preparing to fire up the tow ropes.
Grooming machines have been running almost non-stop at Earl Bale's Ski and Snowboard Centre for the past 2 days as they prepare to open for business for the first time this winter.
After the snowstorm on Wednesday, crews worked through the night grooming the main hill in preparation for opening this weekend.
And that's great news for skiers who are ready to hit the slopes.
I came by to walk my dog and I was actually hoping that the lift would be running. And so now you're saying it's starting tomorrow is good news.
Yeah. The plan was to open long before this weekend, but Mother Nature had other ideas.
This is the latest we've ever opened. So we've been anxious. We've been looking to open up earlier than this, but unfortunately the weather didn't cooperate for us. But so be it. That's the past. Let's think about tomorrow and having a great rest of the winter.
Right now, just 1 of 4 hills is open here at Earl Bale's. The plan is to try and open the rest of the hills, but they need temperatures to drop to around -5 or lower and stay there for an extended period of time so they can make more snow.
Our challenge this January is that we couldn't reach those temperatures, or not too often anyhow.
Crews are working as quickly as possible to get the beginner and racer hills ready. Weather conditions are expected to remain cool, so staff are hopeful that these hills will also be ready next week.
In the meantime, there are plenty of other winter activities locals are enjoying at the park now that they finally have some winter weather.
It's a beautiful area, though. It's not just the ski hill. It's the walking trails, the natural forest, the stormwater management pond.
Some skating, some skiing, walking the dog. Yeah. That's what it's all about.
Both leisure skiing and snowboarding, as well as instructional programs, are being offered at Earl Bale's. Schedules are listed on the city's website. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
car crash in East Vancouver, caught on video, has sparked some debate about how fault is now decided in collisions in our province. The video recorded this morning at East Hastings and Templeton Drive shows a car turning left through a crowded intersection, only to be hit by a car appearing to drive in the bus lane. To help us sort this out, we're joined by lawyer Caitlin Green. She has plenty of experience dealing with ICBC. Thanks for being here, Caitlin. Much
Thanks
appreciated.
for having me.
Why don't we watch the video? This is a shortened version, shows the actual collision. There it is. And again, this is a shortened version, the original video a bit longer. First of all, we hope everyone's okay. When you're looking at this, what factors are going into an examination or an investigation?
Well, any liability analysis where you've got a left-turning driver and a straight-through driver, the first thing you're looking at is what could that left-turning driver see? And were they making sure all three of those lanes were clear as they proceeded through them? Now, if they've done that, then you start to consider what could the straight-through driver have done to prevent a collision. But it all starts with the left turner.
All starts with the left turner. Now, we also should note in this video, there is a large semi-tractor trailer truck that is in the middle of the intersection, we can see in the video. Does that play into this at all?
It might, but only to the extent that that truck may have interfered with the lines of sight for both drivers. In the video, you can see the crash is happening really as the left-turning vehicle starts to get into that third lane. So probably that truck is not affecting things as much as those lines of stopped traffic.
Now, we should also note that the car that hits the other car that's turning left in the intersection appears to be in the bus lane, and there are restrictions on times in which cars can be in those lanes. How does that balance off with the left turner?
Absolutely. So it's still the left turner's responsibility to make sure that bus lane is clear. But what we factor into that analysis is, can you expect a vehicle to be there? What speed are they at? What distance are they at as you start to enter that lane? That's all going to affect how liability gets decided.
Lastly, and we can't presume to know what a judge or ICBC would do or rule in this case, but based on what you've seen, what do you think might be the result?
Well, we don't know the most important thing, which is what that left-turning driver could see and what they did as they proceeded through. But there are similar cases where you've had a scenario, somebody's left-turning, straight-through driver in a bus lane, proven they were speeding, where fault has ended up 100% on the part of the straight-through driver.
So it's still not clear based on case precedent that it's always on the left turner?
Every case turns on its own facts. The left turner has the onus initially, but once you've established they were proceeding through carefully, it's anybody's game.
All right, Caitlin Green, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A reclusive billionaire is making headlines in Montreal. What the owner of an electronics giant is accused of. Next.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
We have some developing news to tell you about in Burnaby right now. Homicide investigators have been called to a deadly shooting. Mounties confirm a man was found dead in a vehicle on Mulberry Place, just off 16th Avenue near Caribou Road, just before noon today. Police say right now the shooting appears to be targeted. They're asking anyone who saw what happened, has information, or has dash cam video to contact them. And we'll have the very latest later in the show or tonight at 11. Meanwhile, the federal Liberals have tabled legislation that will delay a change to the law on medically assisted death. As Marina von Stackelberg tells us, that change to the legislation known as MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying, deals with cases where a mental illness is the sole reason for the request.
The Liberal government says more time is needed before MAID is expanded to allow people suffering solely from a mental illness to have a medically assisted death.
I've had friends who've opted for MAID recently. It's become part of what people feel they can do. We can take the time to get this right.
More than 3% of deaths in Canada last year were from MAID. That's just over 10,000 people, most because they had cancer. The government says the group of people who want to access MAID exclusively because of mental illness is very small.
The issue of mental health is the single criteria is a very, very special case. Somebody who has a terminal disease I think was pretty straightforward for a lot of people to be able to die in dignity. I think this is very different, and there's still a lot of people wanting to make sure it's done safely.
Advocates for assisted death say people with mental illness are being discriminated against, and an extra year is a long time.
We're talking about people generally who have treatment-resistant mental illness, who have suffered for years, if not decades, who have tried multiple treatments over those years, and who truly have no quality of life.
The Liberal government says the extension gives the provinces and medical professionals more time to prepare for the changes and allows for ongoing studies to be completed.
I was frankly a bit confused by how they're going to use this year. They have studied this issue already. There are already expert reports on this issue.
Some doctors disagree about at what point a person with mental illness should qualify for an assisted death. But experts say that debate will still be going on in a year's time. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
He is a reclusive Montreal billionaire who is now at the center of troubling allegations. His name is Robert G. Miller, the founder of the multinational Future Electronics. An investigation by the Fifth Estate and the Radio-Canada program Enquête has revealed that between 1994 and 2006, he was paying teenage girls cash and gifts for sex, allegations he denies. Montreal police investigated the claims, but no charges were ever laid. A warning for you, this story contains graphic content some people may find disturbing. Brigitte Noel reports.
After 3 or 4 days, myself and my team, we were amazed what was going on.
It's an investigation that has haunted John Westlake for years. The private detective was hired by Robert Miller's ex-wife. For 21 days, he monitored this private residence. The billionaire businessman lived just minutes away, but he would regularly come here after work.
Every night, there were females going in and out of the place. We were concerned that there was some young girls. When I mean young, 16, 17, 15 years old, we didn't know.
Radio-Canada's Enquête tracked down 10 women who had encounters with Miller from 1995 to 2006. We are protecting their identities. 6 say they were minors at the time. This woman says she was only 14.
We had sexual intercourse. He didn't wear a condom. It was really disgusting. Yeah. I just closed my eyes and tried to think of something else.
This woman was 17.
He liked having 2 girls at a time, so that meant we had someone with us to kind of encourage us to power through it.
The women say they were given gifts and paid thousands of dollars for sex with the businessman. At his request, they also brought him their friends.
He would ask the girls to bring him new young girls. And there was a reward at the end.
At one point, he even asked me to bring him someone who had never had sex. I said, forget about it.
Robert Miller was investigated by Montreal Police's Child Exploitation Unit from 2009 to 2010, but no charges were ever laid.
We found out later on, went to the prosecutor's office and sat there for a couple of years, I believe, and then we never heard again that they wouldn't proceed.
Robert Miller's lawyer says that his client is too sick with Parkinson's disease to grant us an interview, but that the allegations against him are false and malicious. He provided us with the doctor's note that says because of this illness, Robert Miller has suffered from severe erectile difficulties for the past 20 years. He goes on to say that his client has never had sex with anyone under the age of consent. Now, at the time of the allegations, this was 14. But experts say the criminal code is clear on the matter. Paying for sex with minors is illegal. Kuljeet Kaila, CBC News, Montreal.
Enquête's investigation, the girls around Robert G. Miller, airs tonight on the Fifth Estate. That's at 9 o'clock here on CBC Television, 9:30 in Newfoundland. You can also watch it on CBC Gem, CBC News Explore, and on our website, cbcnews.ca. The Conservative opposition introduced a motion today aimed at reversing changes made to Canada's bail system by the Trudeau government. As Evan Dyer reports, the move comes amid criticism from police and premiers and amid a string of high-profile crimes in some of Canada's major cities.
BC's Premier David Eby, a New Democrat, brought a message about crime to Ottawa yesterday.
For many British Columbians, front of mind is the issue of repeat offending and violent stranger attacks in some of our major centres. And these, we believe, are the unintended consequences of some changes to the federal criminal code.
BC has seen a wave of random attacks, with a lot of the crime down to a small number of people in frequent contact with police, according to the BC Union of Mayors. Ontario has also seen a wave of attacks on law enforcement, including the killing of Constable Greg Pershala, allegedly by a violent criminal out on bail.
Questions and comments.
The bail system is broken in this country, Mr. Speaker. And it's not just Conservatives saying this.
Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives are pointing to an increase in violent crime under the Trudeau government after 2 decades of declines. And they're linking it partly to changes made by the Trudeau government in 2019, changes that reduced enforcement around failures to appear in court or to comply with conditions of release, and required judges to consider whether an accused is Indigenous, homeless, or addicted before denying them bail.
They've taken no responsibility. They've made no commitments to Canadians that they're taking it seriously, that they'll do anything about it. They brought forward no new ideas of how to address the need for immediate bail reform in this country.
I'm disappointed that the official opposition is using tragedies to try to score political points.
Justice Minister David Lametti said today he's open to what he called good faith suggestions on fixing the system.
At the same time, we must ensure that any measures taken will not exacerbate the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples, Black and racialized Canadians in our jails. We must not further marginalize vulnerable people.
Today, Lametti said he'll meet with his provincial counterparts from around the country to hear what they're proposing. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canadian officials are in contact with U.S. counterparts over a spy balloon that the Pentagon says is operated by China.
There's the moon. Right. And then there's that.
Its last publicly known location was over Billings, Montana, but it was spotted earlier over the Aleutian Islands and then our country. China has sent up spy balloons in the past, though the Pentagon says this one has lingered longer than normal. American officials say they are monitoring it and have not ruled out shooting it down. King Charles' portrait will not be replacing Queen Elizabeth's on Australia's new $5 bill. Instead, the new design will pay tribute to that country's Indigenous peoples.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. This is Australia. Let's have some Indigenous culture on our note and let's showcase who we really are. It's not about the Commonwealth anymore.
I think that's excellent. We're in Australia. We need to be a republic. We've got nothing to do with the monarchy.
It's a good ending because the Queen's finished and I don't think Charles is up to it.
Australia's central bank announced the new image will honour Indigenous history and culture, and Indigenous groups will be consulted about the design. The Australian government supports that change. A portrait of the late Queen appears on the current $5 note, as you can see, the only one in Australia that still features an image of a British monarch. Her death last year reignited a debate in Australia about its future as a constitutional monarchy. The U.S. and the Philippines announced new plans for military cooperation today. Manila is giving American forces access to more of its bases. As Magda Gabrisalasa explains, it's about concerns over China's foreign policy.
At the core of this is really concern over China and its military activities near a self-ruling Taiwan and territorial disputes in the South China Sea. So the U.S. has been making many moves to boost its presence in that part of the world. Now you've got the Philippines agreeing to allow the U.S. to have more access to military bases there, 4 new ones, bringing the total to 9.
Our longest partner and ally has been the United States. And as we traverse these troubled waters, geopolitical waters, economic waters that we are facing, I again put great importance on that partnership.
We discussed concrete actions to address destabilizing activities in the waters surrounding the Philippines, including the West Philippine Sea. And we remain committed to strengthening our mutual capacities to resist armed attack. That's just part of our efforts to modernize our alliance. And these efforts are especially important as the People's Republic of China continues to advance its illegitimate claims in the West Philippine Sea.
U.S. troops! Well, not everyone in the Philippines backs this idea. These protesters don't want U.S. troops there to begin with, and any deal to increase that presence is not okay with them. As for China, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry said that the U.S. continues to strengthen its military presence around there and that is adding to the tension and threatening stability. The U.S. has been making more deals in the Indo-Pacific region. Just recently, it also struck a deal with Japan to allow a U.S. Marines unit there to become more mobile. Again, this is all over ongoing concerns over China. Magda Gabrisalasa, CBC News, Washington.
Governments are hoping Canadians will trade their gas guzzlers for a new EV. One big barrier, though, is the cost, why the new vehicles are so pricey. That's coming up.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
The fun of Groundhog Day was sideswiped, to say the least, in the Gaspé Peninsula this morning when it was announced that Val d'Espoir's groundhog Fred had died.
Je vous annonce la mort de Fred.
Yeah, it's believed Fred went to groundhog heaven sometime over November or December while he was hibernating. He was 9 years old. A youngster in a novelty hat stood in for Fred, as you can see, predicting another 6 weeks of winter. And the festivities went on, a little dancing. Why not? Organizers say Fred Jr. will handle the responsibilities next year. A lot longer than 6 more weeks of winter for Fred.
Well, it is
Yeah,
that
that's mean.
cold. It's going to be cold. And he was like, I'm done. I'm out of
He's
here.
like, peace, I've done my time. 9 years old, not bad. We don't know how long he was predicting winter, though. Maybe they caught him when he was 6 or something like that.
And it's cold. It's cold across
There you
BC. We had snow and winter warnings for northern BC. Again, more snow coming just north of Prince George. First, we've got a cold front making its way across the province, followed by a low system, which will bring lots of rain for us here in the Lower Mainland in the coming days. Current temperatures across the province, across the Lower Mainland, 6 degrees at the airport and Pitt Meadows, but it feels a lot colder than it is right now, a couple of degrees below, 3 degrees out in Abbotsford, and across the country, look at these wind chill temperatures, minus 42 in Yellowknife, minus 40 in Thompson, minus 39 in Winnipeg. This is like 7 layers of clothing situation happening, minus 5 in Kelowna, and minus 20 in Edmonton. So these next 6 weeks of winter, yeah, they're off to a pretty good start. For us, 8 degrees the high today. Like I said, it feels a lot colder, above seasonal. Today's low also above seasonal. Humidity dropped a little bit because it is so cold, and rainfall will start Friday noon, and it will bring tons of rain on Friday, up to 30 millimeters, 15 on Saturday and Sunday each. Light rain to kick off next week, but we will be running into some sunshine by about Thursday, and that sun will last for quite a few days. Dan?
It's a nice contrast, nice little way to buttonhole the end of all of that beforehand.
Exactly, right?
Thanks, Kuljeet.
You're welcome.
The federal government wants every new vehicle you buy by 2035 to be all electric. Automobile analysts call it an ambitious goal. One big question, though, given the price point for electric vehicles right now, who can afford to buy them? Katerina Georgieva headed to a dealership to find out more.
Here's a great example of an automobile that would actually provide somebody with decent transportation and give them a low price point.
It's a used car, under $20,000, but it's not an electric vehicle.
What are we looking at for EVs?
So far, what we're seeing is everything's going to be in excess of $55,000 to $60,000 Canadian at this point in time.
That's on his lot, of course. There's a wide range of price points. Nissan, Chevrolet, and Kia offering vehicles in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. But the higher prices, not just an EV problem, it's auto in general. According to this report from October by Autotrader.ca, the average price of a new vehicle in Canada was about $57,500, the highest ever recorded. For used, average price was about $37,000, almost 20% more than same time the previous year, though the prices softened a bit between July and October.
The monthly payments have gone from somewhere in that $500 to $600 range, and if you're on the Lexus side, for example, whether it's new or used, it could be in the $1,200 a month range.
The costs of EVs are high because of the technology.
The more competitive we are, the more our consumers are going to be able to afford the product because the technology is expensive.
But it's not just a price point issue. Supply is tight. Godfrey doesn't have any on his lot.
At an automotive conference in Detroit last month, experts talked about some of these issues, about how high costs are plaguing families across the continent and how transportation can be a real barrier for low-income and moderate-income families when it comes to their ability to live their best lives. But another expert pointed out that it might be a tough pitch to get automakers to actually bring down their price points when they've managed to achieve a seller's market. And yet,
two major automakers appear to be starting a price war. Ford is slashing its new Mustang Mach-E electric vehicle by $6,000 after Tesla dropped its prices by 20% in some cases.
One could argue that the average consumer can't afford these vehicles, that they're often secondary vehicles in many households and luxury purchases. That will need to change if we're going to hit these aggressive, targets of 100% better electric vehicles by 2035.
All the while, families on a budget already have a hard time finding a personal vehicle at a low price point. I asked him, once he gets EVs on his lot, is he worried about being able to sell at the higher price points?
I also think that what will happen is manufacturers are going to recognize, distributors are going to recognize that, look, we need to bring our price points down to match what consumers can afford. We want to be able to sell those vehicles. And so we'll find ways to distribute those vehicles to consumers. I just hope it's not on these long-term finance contracts that extend out into, instead of 7 or 8 years, longer terms than that. I hope we don't turn into a mortgage company on finance contracts with battery electric vehicles.
Katerina Georgieva, CBC News, Windsor.
Kids got game. How a 15-month-old toddler managed to sink a very long putt. We talk baby putter next.
In front of St. Octave Elementary School is a 30-kilometer sign reminding drivers to slow down. About a block away is a monitor showing drivers their exact speed. But still, the limit isn't always respected. This parent has a child at the school and a nearby daycare.
I commute this road every day. It's a very dangerous road because it's very busy, most especially the time that the school children, goes to school or gets back home.
At City Hall, Montreal East Mayor Anne Saint-Laurent is calling for a mobile speed radar to be put in. On Notre Dame, she says there's a school, a recreation center, and a building for people with reduced mobility.
There's many cars per day, and the driver didn't respect any limit, so they don't take care about the school that we have just 2 minutes to walk by walk.
Saint-Laurent says nearby boroughs have these devices in front of their schools. But she says she was told by police that because Montreal East is an agglomeration, it does not qualify for the radars. So she sent an application to the Ministry of Transport.
Why the Montreal can have this tool to respect the limit and I cannot have it. So I just don't understand, and I don't find that fair.
A spokesperson for the MTQ says a pilot project has been studying the use of radars, but that radar should only be used as a last resort and not as a ticket trap. And it says ultimately the responsibility is on drivers to respect the law. But the mayor says they've exhausted all other options and they need a solution. Chloe Rinaldi, CBC News, Montreal.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 2nd, join CBC Vancouver's Michelle Elliott and a panel of top UBC experts at the UBC Med Talks, a hybrid event on the topic of healthy aging. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Take a toddler, give them a golf club, then hit record. Turns out that formula worked. Yeah.
Well done, but whoa! Wait a minute! In! Did you get that? I got that on video! Holy crap! Walker!
Move over, Rory. That is Walker Martin. Nick Martin, his dad, posted the video to Twitter. He says it started when his wife and mother-in-law took Walker for a bike ride and came across the putting green.
That video that my wife took, Brooke, she was the filmer, was probably Walker's third putt. They had just got there, and he ended up sinking this 30-foot putt from one side of the putting green to the other.
Martin says Walker loves his golf clubs, naturally, and he expects he'll be out on the links with them a lot in the future. Well done, Walker. Challenge for you next. Chip in from 40 feet out of a bunker at Langara. We'll get you a hot dog at the turn. It'll be great. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this show live on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as YouTube, Instagram, and our website, cbc.ca/BC. Janella Hamilton will have your late local news at 11 o'clock right after the National, so tune in before you turn in. Good night.